Hello and welcome to the latest from Hearts Standard. My name is Joel Sked and I'm delighted to be joined by Craig Cairns for the very first time. How's it going, Craig?
Very well, Joe. How is Czechia?
Very cheap. Very, very cheap. As I knew I was on to a winner that when I was at the bus station from basically Prague to Plzen, that 2 slices of pizza and a can of beer cost £3.17. So it's no matter what happened on the trip, it was always going to be a positive experience with the prices. So yeah, it's last night, obviously, which we'll come to talk about, was very disappointing. But it's a nice part of the world, that's for sure. I suppose before we jump into the game, I will delighted to announce that, Craig, you are going to be a permanent member of Hearts Standard, so people will be hearing from you, seeing you, and reading you a lot more in the coming weeks and months.
Yeah, delighted to be on board. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, you've picked a great time. Not won a game at the start of the season, so it surely can only get better from here.
The run started well before I got on board, so I don't want any blame apportioned my way.
Yeah, that's true. We can go back to last season, but we won't. We'll look ahead to, we'll look back at last night, and we will discuss the 1-0 heartbreaking loss to Viktoria Plzen in Czechia. Before we kind of break it down, Craig, watching it last night, what was your kind of view on the performance, on the result?
Very encouraging. I mean, I think I would separate those two because the result is really difficult to take given the run that Hearts are on at the moment. I think if you come away with a draw there, you can dress it up as a victory in many ways, given that it's a two-legged tie. Now, it doesn't give us that win that we're still looking for to get the monkey off our back, but yeah, it just kind of adds to the poor run and just the circumstances that it came about in as well. The performance, it looked like for the first 30 minutes that we were potentially going to be overwhelmed and lose the game comfortably, but we grew into the game by the end of the half, and then we took the positivity from that and went toe to toe with them in the second half, and it gives a lot of encouragement for the second leg, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. It was weird because when I was writing the instant analysis, the late goal actually didn't really change much. I was like, because I basically written everything ready to go on the premise of it being 0-0, because that's what it looked like it was heading towards, and then they scored, and then I was like, I need to change a couple of bits, but the performance as a whole was, I think you hit the nail on the head by describing it as encouraging. There was maybe elements of frustration, which we'll no doubt get to, in that I probably didn't think they were as good as maybe billed or I thought they were going to be, but I don't know if that was a case of just how effective Hearts were at different elements of the game. But Naismith and the team, after the Falkirk game, they spoke about basically a reaction and standing up, and they did that. I think that was a big thing. It was a real collective team performance. Saw that with the back three. I thought the three centre backs did really, really well, and it was just unfortunate for Oyegoki's knee turning the ball into Gordon's net, that you go from having a very, very mature, measured away performance in Europe, which I think it's come on leaps and bounds from, for example, away to Palk. Thought it was a better performance than away to Rosenborg, and then obviously you look at Fiorentina and Zurich. I thought it was a step up from that as well. And then to go into a bit of heartbreak, which we'll no doubt get to when talking about the goal. But I suppose going back to the start, what did you make of the team selection and the game plan in general? Because again, Naismith changed formation. I thought it was a good idea to go with a back three just because of their threats, and it did. It seemed, I think you said it took a while to build into the game, but Hearts largely looked quite comfortable.
Yeah, I think we rode our luck a little bit in that early spell, and then their forwards fell out the game as we sort of gained more control. But yeah, I think on another day they maybe, similar to Hearts versus Falkirk at the weekend. On another day, a couple of their chances go in. I had one cleared off the line. There was a good save from Gordon as well. I think they easily could have been a goal or two up in that first half, and then that changes the complexion of the game. But given that we rode that, I mean, I don't think we were terrible. I mean, I think we rode our luck a little bit, but I still think we were pretty good. We struggled when we were on the ball. We looked nervous when we were on the ball. Even when we got a corner, we worked a really good routine, but the second pass back to Penrice wasn't good enough. And it was one of the few times we had got up the pitch at that point. And yeah, you could see that they were either nervous or we weren't making the right decisions when we had the ball. Defensively, as I say, we rode the luck a little bit, but there was still, I mean, I thought right from the start, Kent's defending was heroic. And you could see that he was clearly hurting at points of the game as well. And yeah, I think he was one of the better players on the night. But overall, as I said before, it's an encouraging performance. I think it's just disappointing that it kind of adds to this long winless run.
Yeah, because we'll come on to talk about the importance of the game on Sunday and kind of what Naismith's thoughts are ahead of looking ahead to the second leg and what he does. Sticking on kind of the positives of the night is what or who kind of stood out for you. You mentioned Frankie Kent as being her heroic. Mm-hmm. I thought he was brilliant. I thought Stephen Kingsley had a really good game. Rolls was solid, but Malachi Boateng, I thought he was just putting a really, really good kind of just subtle performance in the midfield. He just seems to be in the right place at the right time all the time, and he is, I think, going to be a very astute signer.
Yeah, as you said, a position that Hearts were lacking before he came in the door, or certainly like fit number sixes anyway. I also thought Devlin next to him, the longer the game went on, the better he seemed to get as well. And he was a really important part of Hearts getting that press right in the first half. In the second half, that maybe didn't work quite as well in the first half. And then later in the game, I mean, there were stages in the game where different players played better. And I thought towards the end of the game, Vargas, other than a few, I mean, he must have been running on empty by the time he came off, but other than a few maybe wrong decisions or just sort of didn't quite find the pass or whatever it was, he was a moment away from doing some damage there. So yeah, I mean, to go back to something that I didn't answer that you asked earlier about the system, I think that worked because I think that was a tactic that as the game grew and became more open, Vargas would be somebody that'd be able to pick up pockets of spaces, and he did do that, but he danced inside a couple of players a few times and things like that. But you saw just before he came off when he went to pass to Boyce and it was behind him, he was kind of running on empty by that point.
Yeah, we'll come on to Vargas very shortly because I'll bring in a couple of comments. Just on Devlin, it was when he made the challenge and he got booked, and you're just like, what are you doing? It's the most needless.
So early, yeah.
Looking to get it so early, I was like, why have you done
and
that?
Vargas as well. That's 2 games in a row that Vargas has got booked for retaliation when he could just walk away.
I thought it was weird. The Vargas booking was. I thought it looked from my vantage point was really harsh. I thought
I wondered whether it was for stopping the attack rather than the actual foul, because he can't be given it for that foul. So I mean, it's kind of, I suppose it's borderline. The guy's running away from the centre circle in the Hearts half, so it's kind of borderline. I can't really remember what was going on in front of him, but the referees maybe deemed it just stopping a promising attack.
But there was no question about Devlin's yellow card. But it's weird. Devlin, the more I look at Devlin, it's almost like he needs a yellow, and then he just plays on the edge. Then he's just like, right, I'll just ride this out, because there's a few times you think, don't dive in here, don't dive in. He's flying into a tackle, but to give him his due, he is quite good at getting a book in and then just pushing it without going over the edge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and as one of the pieces that went out in the site said before the game, he seems to be able to raise his level for these occasions, which was evident again there.
It's one of those where I just thought Devlin was that he on the European nights. I don't know if it's just his style of play that you maybe don't see too many of those players in general, just kind of generalising on the continent, just his kind of busy energy that just he's almost like a chaos factor, and that kind of shines through in Europe. And I suppose it's going to he's one of the first names on the team sheet next Thursday. On Vargas, so I'll bring in Jim. He said I'll bring in a few the comments. To say, fairly positive after last night's game. You're still in the tight. Onus on now to attack and get the goals. Defending a 1-0 is tricky, especially at a bouncing Tynecastle. Said he asked, do we know why we wore white shorts last night? No, but I'm going to ask the question. Just with the white shorts, it looked like we turned up and forgotten the shorts, and we just had to use.
I guess it would be the referees being strict about just colour clash about. Because sometimes you see that teams that have the same coloured shorts, one team has to change theirs. So it'll probably just be him. Because were they playing in blue? Was it blue? Was it dark blue?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. So maybe it was.
Yeah, I just assumed that it was because of the how dark the maroon is. Jim says, I thought it was a slow start, but we grew into the game. Seems to be our new style of play. Wasteful up front and slack at the back. All Ugoki need to do was come to the ball and put behind. We'll talk about that goal shortly. And thought we had the better chances. Vargas really showing his inexperience in decision-making, but overall it was an enjoyable game to watch for 95 minutes. Yeah, like you said, Vargas, you were like, I think he made a few wrong decisions. I think he did. I think his decision-making in general is it needs to be improved. He's still a young guy, but he's obviously a very important part of the squad. Just his ability to run in behind, his ability to kind of run the channels and be a pest. But I think you said it. He didn't have that moment, and it's beginning to not beginning to frustrate. But it's like last season he went so long without a goal that he is someone who just tries and tries and tries, and just like he does need a moment that might spark him into being maybe a more consistent goal scorer or assister, because you looking now 1 goal in 4 games, and it's getting back to kind of start of last season territory with the frustrations in attack.
I think that's a really good point. It's something that Hearts need to address and sort over the next couple of months. Is sharing goals around. We're far too reliant on Lawrence Shanklin last season. I think a good parallel or comparison is Aberdeen with Miovski. You saw that right from the start of the season, they've known that they're going to lose him, so they've been working on a plan post Miovski, and they've been sharing the goals around. Now I know their level of opposition, you can argue, has been a little below the standard of what some of the teams Hearts have faced, but they are getting goals from all over the pitch, and that's something that Hearts aren't getting and need quickly, because we can't. Lawrence Shanklin's always going to have periods where he doesn't score goals. There's going to be runs of a few games. There was one last season, and there just needs to be other people to step up and score goals, and we don't have that in the moment. There's nobody obvious stepping up to take that burden at the moment.
I suppose it's maybe something that we'll talk about, maybe do a video or an article next week about the kind of last week of the transfer window and what we can kind of expect from Hearts and what Hearts need. Do you think we need another striker? Because you look at last night, he brought Boyce on for Shankland, and just with these inconsistencies, do you think it would help to bring in a different type of forward?
Yeah, I don't know, and I don't know whether this is achievable or not. But somebody that can play wide as well, or maybe both. I don't know. I think the start of the season has maybe shown that we might be lacking a little bit out wide as well. But it depends how he sets up as well. I think for Europe anyway, it looks like, and the bigger games, because he did it against Rangers, it looks like Vargas through the centre is the tactic that he wants to go for, and Shanklin dropping off. So I think we'll see a lot more of that in the European games, because he does give you that out ball, and if he can refine his game, then you saw the potential towards the end of the game last night. You see the potential of the damage he can do late in matches.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he's. I think there's definitely been a frustration with Vargas, but I think that it's just about refining it. I spoke to Naismith during over the summer. He talked about how Vargas, it's now beginning to kind of for him to learn that when he's got the ball in the final third or in the box, he's the guy that's in control. He doesn't need to be rushed or slash at shots, which he was guilty of last season. Is that he is a quick player that defenders won't like coming against him. So you're in control and you kind of dictate in that final third. So there's definitely, once that improves, then I think he can be a really devastating player. I will continue to walk around Gorgie beating the drum of big physical Hearts. So, because when I looked at Daniel Vasulin for Plzen, I thought we handled him really, really well. There was one moment early on where Kent went to win the ball, he flicked on, but that was the only time I can remember like Kent coming off second best. And then they handled him really well with the crosses in the box, etc., etc. But I just looked at him thinking, yeah, I wouldn't mind a striker like that as an option at Hearts. Just a big focal point, because kind of you look at it is that Shankland is great, but I just like him. I like him deeper, being much more involved with the play, and then you have someone maybe that can just occupy defenders the way that Kevin Kyle did a number of years ago for Jim Jeffrey's side. Albeit I'm aware that maybe it's not the type of striker that Stephen Naismith wants to play with.
No, but do you think the chat seemed to be that a striker was what they were looking to add? Do you think the start to the season will have made them reassess what their targets are?
Without having any kind of inside information, it's something I'll probably look to ask Naismith in the next week or so. I would imagine yes. And I know certainly earlier on in the window they were looking at a couple of options to guys who potentially went elsewhere. And now, just with obviously Tagawa leaving, I think it's just a big ask for. So you got the three options are Shankland, Vargas, Boyce, and James Wilson. And Naismith mentioned Musa, but I think the fact that Musa is someone who's more long-term, he's not featured yet, he's been on the bench a couple of times, you can't really rely on him or ask too much of him. We've talked about kind of Vargas, still young, still learning. And then Boyce, I see Boyce as more of a number 10. He's not started the season well. And then again, James Wilson, similar to Musa. It's a big ask for him to be... if someone gets injured, to step in and play regularly. I think it's important that you don't want to stop his progression and you don't want to limit his minutes, but at the same time the balance of having someone who is potentially something a wee bit different, more experienced. Greedily, I would happily I would like to see us bring in a wide man and a forward, but I think it might just be one rather than two.
It could be that things just haven't clicked yet. We're still very early into the season. It's a small sample size, so I don't think the winless run is anything to worry about too much at the moment. And even if you look within those games, good performance against Rangers, good performance against the higher level opposition that we faced. Falkirk, they were still creating chances in there. If you look at both Falkirk and Dundee, actually, there's a disastrous half and a fairly good half in both of those matches. So it's not like there's games where it's just complete domination and not getting out and nothing's working. There are signs that things are working within there. So hopefully it's just fair few new players in there and things just haven't quite bedded in and clicked yet. And we're clearly rotating so players are available for certain matches.
Yeah.
So the amount of energy that's been spent there and the travel, there's going to be changes again on Sunday. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, and just when you talked about the halves, like creating chances, I asked Naismith about it last night. I was going to clip it and put it in here, but it was one of those where it's when you got the press conference, you had to ask a question, then it was translated, and then Naismith would answer, and it was translated. So just it was like twice as long the press conference. But he basically said what he said. Yes, need to score goals, but compared it to, he was kind of comparing it to this time last season, where he's more content in the fact that we're creating chances, we're getting chances, and we're just not finishing them rather than not creating much at all. Before we move on to look further ahead at Motherwell the next tie, just a couple of things I think was worth talking about. Firstly, the goal. I think it was. Yeah, Jim said, all you need to do is come to the ball and put it behind. What was your view of the goal? Because Viktoria Plzen, that was one thing that they, like Tom pinpointed in his analysis of them, is that they get the ball wide and cross it. I think they had 27 crosses, he messaged me to say last night, which is a fair amount. Hearts dealt with it very, very well until the very last one. It seemed to me that Oyugaki was kind of caught in two minds, but I don't know if I've only seen it once.
Yeah, I mean, even with the replays, it's not easy to see exactly what's going on and the other areas of the pitch at that point. But yeah, it looks like he kind of gets caught between, like, back to the keeper and behind. He should just put it to clear it to safety, even if that's a corner, because it's a strength of ours, and I think we showed that again last night. We coped well with their aerial threat from set pieces. There was a worrying moment. I don't know if you guys noticed it in the stadium, but there was a worrying moment when, just before, in the second half, one of their corners, the camera zoomed in, and the big striker that you were just talking about, I forget his name. I want to say Vlasic or something like that. But what was his name?
Daniel Vasilin.
And Cammy Devlin was marking him. So there was just this worry for a second. He was honestly like half the height of him. It looked like the boy's 6'4" or something. So I think Oyugaki just had to put the ball out for a corner there, and we deal with the set piece, because you see him trying his best to make amends just after the centre's taken. He charges forward quite positively, but there's just no time to do anything. It was literally the last chance of the game, and it's really gutting. He's just a young defender, so it's difficult to criticise him too much. That's what you get when you sign younger players. They're raw. They need to make the mistakes to learn from them. So it's just unfortunate that it's happened in a moment like that. And as you see, even the nature of how it's gone in as well, it's hit the post and then spun up over Gordon and just gone in. It's really, really unfortunate that it doesn't even just hit the face of the post and come back out.
Aye, it was weird, because I was speaking to my mates in the pub late last night, and they were saying, and from their vantage point in the way end, that they thought it went kind of straight at Gordon, and he should have kept it out. But I was like, no, it came off. Looked to me like it came off the post, and then there was not much he could do about it. On Gordon, I suppose it's definitely worth mentioning that it was his 23rd appearance in Europe. He becomes the outright record holder for most appearances in Europe for Hearts. And I'll bring in Withy. Asks, morning gents, any news on severity time from or on the Xander back issue? No, not yet. He just had a back spasm. I think it was yesterday morning he had a back spasm. Spoke to... it seemed like he was on strong painkillers due to this kind of the nature of it. So I'm not sure how long that's going to be. I've never had back spasms, so we'll find out more on Sunday. But Naismith said that Gordon was always going to play. I thought Gordon had a very good game. There was elements of old school Gordon that kicking would go astray, but other than that, some big saves. I thought he took the pressure off the team with a couple of really important, like, high balls claims. We talked about defending the crosses or aerial bombardment, and he was a key part of that as well.
Yeah, there was a few moments I was worried, but he stood up to it well. What did you make of that? That sort of caught my ear, if that's even an expression, when Naismith said that in his interview to Brian McLaughlin, that Craig Gordon was always going to play. Do you think he means that Craig Gordon is now the number one goalkeeper, or do you think he means that he was rotating and he's going to continue to rotate? Like, Gordon's the Cup and European goalkeeper and Clark's the league goalkeeper, or game to game, or whatever. What did you make of it?
Yeah, it was another an interesting one. That was because he kind of mentions it afterwards with us as well when he said it. But I'm guessing it's in the nicest way possible that it didn't really matter that Xander Clark had back spasm because he was always going to play. And yeah, I found that interesting. It's hard to second guess. It's hard to second guess Naismith.
Managers are always at it.
Yeah, I wouldn't have been surprised if then Clark was back in on Sunday. Is it
or is sold?
Oh yeah.
I'm just being flippant.
It's one of those where I don't know how you feel about it, but as a fan, as a traditionalist, I'd quite like just the knowing of who's your number one, a consistent number one, and the kind of uncertainty of who's going to be in goals. The squad might be like really content with it, the keepers might be content with it, but I would prefer if it was just like a kind of decision, and if it was the case that Nathan said, right, Clark's going to play league games, Gordon's going to play the cup games and Europe. But when he was asked about it last week, I think it was, he was saying no, there's no hard and fast rule that someone's going to be the goalkeeper, the league goalkeeper, someone's going to be the cup goalkeeper. I think it's going to be very much dependent on performance. If that's and then that suggests that maybe Clark might be out after the mistake against Dundee. But again, I think it's harsh on a goalkeeper to maybe just drop him after one mistake and then you're just rotating between. I think just doesn't provide any certainty or clarity. So yeah, I suppose if one of the goalkeepers is injured, it does make Naismith's decision and job a lot easier.
Yeah, I mean, I can't think of any examples really where a successful team has been known for the rotation of goalkeepers. And I think in about other than a split percentage point of instances, I don't think any team really rotates their goalkeeper other than there's a cup goalkeeper or something like that. That's quite frequent these days to make sure that your backup keeper does get X amount of appearances over the season. But yeah, I mean, unless it is just naturally form-wise, he thinks Gordon's back to the level where he's now pushed and deserving of the place, and Xander Clark's made that mistake. If that's the case, and Gordon's now the goalkeeper, and I mean like sort of like in a medium-term sense, and then eventually it becomes Xander Clark, then I think that's fair enough. I don't think that's a weird thing to do in football. But if it's like every couple of weeks, or if it's more frequent, then it does become a little bit of a sort of head scratcher as to what's really going on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose the last thing I want to talk about from this game before we look forward and finish up was just one of the most head scratcher moments from the match was Lawrence Shankland's throw-in. Do you remember that when he hurled it?
I must have missed that.
No, it was sorry. It was, I don't know.
Was this a breakaway? Was this when we were on the attack and then the ball was played up the right and we wanted? I couldn't tell who was the. Sometimes it wasn't the best quality what I was watching, and I couldn't tell who had taken the throw in, and I tried to follow the player because I think it was Taylor that had played the ball forward, and then it was sort of on the halfway line. There was a challenge between a player from each team, and it went out, and then that's when the throw in was taken.
But I just remember it, Shankland. So it was on the far side from where I was in the main stand, and he it was a wee bit. Yeah, so I think we were going up the left-hand side in the first half, and then Shankland looked to take it quickly, but he hurled it. It was like fair play. It was an absolute launcher of a throw. So he chucked it to the far side of the semis, what's the halfway line, and it was to Kingsley. And it was just like Kingsley was immediately put under pressure, and they just broke away and ended up leading the corner. And then so Shankland got headed back, and obviously couldn't hear the conversation, but it very much went along the lines of Frankie Kent asking, "What the hell are you doing?" And then Shankland going, "Kingsley should have just cleared up the pitch." And then Kingsley was like, "What are you talking about? Why are you throwing it to me?" It was just, it was one where we got away with, but it was absolutely wild. It was just, it made me, now looking back at it, it made me laugh a lot.
I thought you were actually talking about an attacking one in the second half where we were going up the right. So a completely different one. I still don't know who took it, but I don't think it was Shankland, because it was when Vargas backheeled it to back to Shankland. There was a third man involved in that attack that took the throw in quickly, and I didn't catch who it was.
No, this was very much the opposite, where Shankland won, and it put us under a lot of trouble. Moving on, finally, bring in Russell McLaughlin's question. How do you think that late goal impacts how Naismith will set up for the second leg? 0-0 being a difference to the starting 1-0 down at Tynecastle and needing at least 2 goals over 90 to 120 minutes. Secondly, do you think we'll see less personnel changes for Fir Park on Sunday, given recent comments from Naismith? So yeah, I think that kind of wraps up to the talking points in one. Looking ahead to next Thursday, this is, as we talked about, this is a very winnable tie. I think they're there to be got at, especially at Tynecastle. They've talked about how they are wary of Tynecastle, the atmosphere, and playing in front of 18 to 20,000 fans, which was curious because they've played in Europe against some very, very big teams. And then on the flip side, you have to also factor in how important Sunday is against Motherwell, because just almost like the perception of it. You talked about the winless run. I think the sooner that comes to an end, the better, obviously, to build confidence. But also, you look at, for example, Aberdeen have had a good start to the season. They've got a really good run of fixtures. They're home at Kilmarnock on Sunday, and then because if you fail to beat Motherwell, and then Aberdeen beat Kilmarnock, then you are a fair few points behind. So it is 2 very important games in a space of 4 or 5 days. How do you think Naismith should approach it?
I really don't envy him. It's really difficult because, in a sense, he must be wondering what he has to do to get a positive result, because, as we discussed before, even if you take the Falkirk game as an example, he said afterwards, I mean, I didn't agree with everything that he said, but I agreed with the fact that he said he's picked a team that should be strong enough to win, and they've created the chances to win the game, or at least go ahead and put a different complexion in the game in the first half. So in a sense, you can't really, I mean, you can maybe argue then, although if you don't play fringe players like Boyce or Oda and you play the likes of Shankland, then you score those chances or something like that. I mean, there is a counter argument to it. But yeah, I don't envy him, because both games are as important as each other. I think he maybe has to prioritize I don't know if this is going to be controversial or not, but I think he has to prioritize the Motherwell one a little bit. I think not only would a positive result there get the monkey off the back and give a little bit more positivity and momentum going into Thursday, there's a safety net with Thursday, which I was going to say which the league doesn't have. I mean, you've got another like 30 odd games or something like that as a safety net. But the longer the run goes on in the league, the more difficult it becomes to turn it around. And I think that we're going to see changes regardless. Like I say, I think the rotation's here to stay, and I think it's a bit of a. I don't really understand when people say stop the rotation. I'm not entirely sure how that would work, because you would just run players. You just run players into the ground and then you substitute them and bring them, and then start the next game, just change them then when they're not tired enough to start. I don't know. You're going to have to make changes at some point. So rotation is so that you are planning few games in the future so that certain players are coming to peak fitness for certain matches, or be able to play 90 minutes for certain matches and things like that. But the longer the run goes on, the more people will point to these things as sort of reasons why it's not happening. I do think it is affecting some of the new signings, like the likes of Spittle's not getting a run of minutes to sort of bed himself in. I think he's nailed on to start on Sunday. It's maybe affected the likes of Danda as well, as has kind of been like shifted about positions. So yeah, to answer your question, I would personally prioritise the game at the weekend, but I think he's already got in mind that the likes of Danda and Spittle will come in for this weekend, and he'll rest certain players with a view to them coming back on Thursday for Plzen. And you mentioned it before about the home advantage. We've seen it in the past. There's times in the past where that crowd has lifted the team and helped get them over the line. So yeah, they'll definitely be hoping for another night like that. It's going to be an amazing atmosphere regardless.
Yeah, absolutely. It's with tying the balance. Hopefully, the ticket price is very reasonable. So hopefully, it's a sellout. It's bouncing. And I completely agree with everything you said. I would prefer prioritise the Motherwell game because I just think Thursday takes care of itself. Just with the nature of the game, like you said, with the atmosphere.
They'll lift themselves for it more, exactly. I think the players will naturally lift themselves for it. The crowd will be up for it. You're right. I think there's you can sort of ride on that wave a bit more on Thursday, whereas Sunday is going to be it's going to be a slog, and we're going to have to get a result.
I just think Naismith on Sunday. I agree with the rotation. I think I certainly wouldn't. I would be against like 6, 7, 8 changes every game, but I do think the natural way to go is 2 or 3 changes here and there where necessary. That's
and then use your 5 subs.
Yeah, and then use your 5 subs, but have a core of 8, 9 players who you're like that. This is our spine, and then you kind of just move around within that. And on Sunday, I think he should just play play what he views as the strongest team to win that particular game. So with kind of forgetting about last night and forgetting about Thursday, just play Motherwell in isolation. If you win that, then you can just see it like a switch. Confidence going into Thursday where it'll be absolutely jumping at Tynecastle, and it kind of just takes care of itself. We'll finish there because I have got 1 minute to pack and check out my hotel.
You've been waiting for me to shut up there in that last answer.
No, it's so I apologise to Michael and Russell about questions about the forward line or the signings, but we will talk about that in the next week ahead of the end of the transfer window. But we'll be back on Monday to chat about the Motherwell game. Thank you very much, everyone, for contributing, subscribing, engaging, listening to us. We'll have content build up from the Plzen game over the next couple of days, and looking ahead to Motherwell, and then again looking ahead to Plzen on Thursday. But yeah, other than that, have a good weekend, everyone. Thank you very much, Craig, and thank you very much, everyone, for listening. Goodbye.